Why did the Chicago outfit mafia disappear? The Chicago outfit did not emerge suddenly. It arose as a response to a world that could not govern itself, as an attempt to create a structure of power where the state was weak and the streets of Chicago were dangerous and unpredictable. Immigrants from southern Italy, primarily from Sicily, brought with them their habits, traditions, and a criminal culture built on strict discipline, a code of silence, and the concept of honor. They arrived in the United States poor, with minimal knowledge of English, without connections, but with enormous ambition and a strong instinct for survival. In this world, power was not measured by laws, but by force. And it was this force that became the foundation of the Chicago outfit. The early years were a time of chaos. City streets were divided into ethnic neighborhoods where each district tried to control its own business. From small-scale trade to large operations, survival required negotiations, alliances, and brutal reprisals against anyone who attempted to step out of line. At first, these were small groups, but gradually they united under the leadership of several figures who managed not only to subdue local gangs, but also to establish supply chains, protection systems, and profit distribution. These men did not simply commit crimes, they built a system. Every member of the family knew their role and understood the consequences of violating the rules. Breaches of discipline were punished not only by death, but also by expulsion from the organization, which for many meant losing everything: family, income, respect, and protection. The era of Prohibition became the true golden age of the Chicago outfit. When the government banned the sale of alcohol, the mafia created a system capable of delivering liquor to every bar and restaurant in the city. This activity required an exceptional level of organization. Secret distilleries, hidden warehouses, complex supply routes, specialized vehicles, and drivers who were required to follow strict discipline and maintain silence. Money flowed freely, and the organization's power grew rapidly. They did not only sell alcohol, they controlled the entire infrastructure surrounding it, including transport companies, warehouses, loading operations, and even politicians who could be bribed or intimidated. The Chicago outfit turned into a massive mechanism in which every cog knew its place and functioned in harmony with the rest. A key element was a culture of loyalty and discipline. The Chicago outfit did not survive solely because of weapons or fear. It survived because of a culture that transformed crime into a professional craft. New recruits went through a long period of testing, learning all internal rules, understanding the system of punishments and rewards. Respect for elders, the ability to remain silent, and calculated decision-making were valued above all else. The organization was more complex than any corporation. Of its time, each level had its own tasks, its own money, its own overseers. Senior members distributed profits, enforced rules, monitored activities, and punished violations of discipline. Despite being a criminal organization, the Chicago outfit possessed elements of a social institution. It provided protection for its members and ensured that their families were not left without support if someone was imprisoned. There were internal mechanisms to assist the elderly or veterans who had devoted years of service to the organization. Within the family, there existed an almost state-like structure: a treasury, rules, internal courts, income distribution, and protection for members. This internal order allowed the outfit to withstand pressure from the outside world and remain an influential force. As the organization grew, new opportunities emerged. The Chicago outfit began investing money into legitimate businesses, allowing it to launder profits and expand its influence. They controlled restaurants, hotels, nightclubs, transport companies, construction firms, and even early film studios. This allowed them not only to generate income, but also to control city life and keep people dependent. Every enterprise had a dual purpose: legitimate profit and a hidden system of control that enabled the outfit to remain a powerful force in Chicago and beyond. Particular attention was paid to the information network. The mafia knew what was happening in the city before anyone else did. Within the police, city hall, courts, and newspapers, there were insiders passing along information. This allowed the Chicago outfit to plan operations with remarkable precision, avoid direct confrontations with law enforcement, and manipulate other gangs, families, and businessmen. Any disruption in the city's order could be noticed and exploited. The organization operated in such a way that outside observers saw only crimes and high-profile events, but almost never the internal management system that made them resilient. The early leaders of the Chicago outfit were not only brutal, but also extremely calculating. They understood that firepower alone was insufficient without discipline, that fear was important, but respect and adherence to internal rules were even more critical. They built the organization with long-term strategy in mind, divided spheres of influence among families, formed alliances, and always maintained the ability to control the situation. Every killing, every hostile takeover, every deal with bootleggers was part of a plan to strengthen power and influence. Within the Chicago outfit existed a system of intelligence and diplomacy that allowed it to maintain relationships with other families in New York, Detroit, Cleveland, and even international groups. This network made it possible not only to share profits and control territories, but also to prevent internal wars, neutralize threats in advance, and create new opportunities for expansion. However, alongside growth came rising internal tension. A new generation of family members did not always share the values of their elders. They pursued fast money, drugs, gambling, and luxury. The old methods of discipline no longer worked on the young, while new sources of income demanded greater speed, harsher tactics, and a different moral code. The Chicago outfit began to lose control as internal conflicts intensified, as younger members stopped respecting the code of silence, and as betrayal and intrigue became more common. With each passing year, the organization became more complex, but also more fragile. Federal agencies began actively combating organized crime. Witness protection programs were established, and laws targeting racketeering and tax evasion made it possible to dismantle the organization through legal means. Gradually, the old reasons for the outfit's existence disappeared. Fear of the law was replaced by the real power of the state. The availability of drugs and legitimate businesses reduced the mafia's role as an intermediary and protector. All of this led to the Chicago outfit ceasing to function as a powerful system of control. It no longer dominated cities, industries, and streets as it once had. What remained were fragments of its structure, memories, legends, and shadows of former power. Today more interesting as a historical phenomenon than as a real force. The mafia did not disappear suddenly. It dissolved into a changing world, losing the discipline and cultural foundation on which its authority had been built. The Chicago outfit was not merely a group of criminals, it was a fully hierarchical organization operating under strict rules and internal laws, understood only by its members. Every new recruit underwent a long and difficult initiation process. At first, they had to prove loyalty through small tasks, delivering messages, assisting with warehouse operations, transporting goods. Only after that were they entrusted with more serious responsibilities, overseeing alcohol shipments, monitoring territories, participating in extortion, and resolving disputes. The system resembled a multi-level corporation where every position, every function, and every zone of control had a clear purpose. At the core of the organization lay strict discipline and role division. Senior members held absolute power over juniors and could make decisions affecting the life of any family member. They enforced the code of silence, ensured tasks were carried out on time, and monitored the correct distribution of income. Any violation could cost a person their life, but alongside fear existed powerful incentives, respect, access to resources, and participation in profitable operations. The Chicago outfit functioned like a finely tuned mechanism, where a weak link could trigger a chain reaction, but under proper leadership, the system operated without failure. The organization's financial operations were astonishingly complex. Money, generated from alcohol, gambling, bookmaking, and illegal enterprises, was redistributed through a network of secret accounts, shell companies, and trusted intermediaries. Part of the profits went to support senior members and veterans, part to maintain warehouses and hidden weapons caches, and part to bribe officials and police. Internally, there were mechanisms of control, regular reports, secret inspections, and signaling systems that exposed rule violators. These measures allowed the outfit to manage massive cash flows that had to be transported by trucks, stored in basements, hidden distilleries, and abandoned warehouses disguised as legitimate businesses. Weapons played a crucial role, but they were instruments of control, not chaos. Thompsons, pistols, shotguns, revolvers, and occasionally automatic weapons were purchased centrally and distributed strictly based on necessity. Killings and attacks were planned in advance as part of an overall strategy, down to the minute. Every act of violence had a purpose: to reinforce authority, punish betrayal, protect profits, or demonstrate power on the streets. Mass shootings, such as the infamous Valentine's Day Massacre, were rare and carefully calculated actions designed to create psychological impact. The outfit's secret warehouses and logistics systems were feats of criminal engineering. Basements of old buildings, sewer tunnels, abandoned factories, and storage facilities formed networks that allowed alcohol, weapons, and money to be transported almost invisibly. The mafia used specially modified trucks with false bottoms, hidden rooms behind walls, and secret compartments known only to senior members. Each facility had responsible overseers, each vehicle was accompanied by trusted men, and every delivery was strictly recorded. This system allowed the outfit to stay one step ahead of law enforcement for decades. Equally important was intelligence gathering. The Chicago outfit maintained a vast network of informants, not only within the police, but also in business, courts, city hall, and newspapers. They reported on competitor movements, planned raids, new laws, and potential threats. This intelligence allowed the mafia to maneuver, avoid traps, and shape events to its advantage. Leaders viewed intelligence as the living tissue of the organization. Without it, they could not control the city or their operations. Internal diplomacy was just as critical. The Chicago outfit maintained relations with major families in New York, Detroit, Cleveland, and with Italian and American criminal groups. These connections were used to divide profits, prevent wars, and organize joint operations. Decisions were often made not through violence, but through negotiation, threats, demonstrations of discipline, and calculated displays of power. Every member understood that the success of the outfit depended not only on brutality, but on the ability to negotiate, conduct complex talks, and build strategic alliances. However, this system was fragile. As the city expanded, new technologies emerged, federal agencies strengthened their reach, and international trade increased, the internal rules began to fail. A new generation, raised in America and less tied to old traditions, wanted fast money and personal luxury. They ignored the code of silence, violated discipline, and became involved in drugs and gambling beyond the control of senior leadership. This created internal conflicts, betrayal, and power struggles. The Chicago outfit gradually lost its ability to control the city. The system of warehouses, intelligence networks, and covert operations that had once been nearly impenetrable became vulnerable to modern laws and technology. Federal agencies used wiretaps, financial surveillance, and witness protection programs. When informants could disappear under new identities and start new lives, fear ceased to be an effective tool of control. It was precisely this fragility, the loss of internal control, betrayal, and new methods of profit, that destroyed what had been built for decades as a flawless machine. The Chicago outfit, once dominant over all of Chicago and its industries, became a shadow of itself, remnants of an organization unable to compete with new gangs, international cartels, and a transformed urban economy. Its influence became symbolic, while its legend grew stronger than its real power. The Chicago outfit was always more than a group of armed men. It was a living structure where loyalty, fear, calculation, and spoken word were equally important. But like any system, it was vulnerable to internal fracture. The first cracks appeared when younger generations began to see the organization not as a family or a governing structure, but as a tool for rapid enrichment. Conflicts, once resolved through discipline and negotiation, escalated into open wars, intrigue, and betrayal. Leadership faced the reality that old-school discipline could no longer restrain members seeking instant profit, disregarding silence, and interfering in others' revenue streams. Each new conflict at the top triggered a domino effect. One member extorted another. A third violated agreements. A fourth attempted to seize control of profitable territory. Law enforcement benefited from these internal struggles. Every division made surveillance, infiltration, and prosecution easier. Often the mafia collapsed not from raids or arrests, but from disgruntled insiders who chose to cooperate with authorities, opening doors for external intervention. Senior leaders tried to maintain control through fear and reputation. They carried out demonstrative punishments, showed the consequences of betrayal, and installed loyalists in key positions. But internal conflict produced a chain reaction. Each strike weakened trust and fueled ambition. Younger members stopped obeying orders and began operating independently, creating unauthorized income schemes. The Chicago outfit slowly lost its monopoly over profits and street control. Drugs became the ultimate catalyst of destruction. Older bosses avoided narcotics, understanding that they destroyed discipline and trust. Younger criminals saw drugs as the fastest path to wealth. They partnered with cartels, opened distribution channels, and broke sacred rules. Though immensely profitable, narcotics eroded the organization from within. Members became volatile, reckless, and uncontrollable. The clash between old values and new greed shattered the equilibrium that once sustained the outfit. At the same time, external threats intensified. New gangs emerged, faster, more ruthless, and unconcerned with tradition. They seized territories, launched street wars, and ignored the long-standing rules that had governed criminal coexistence for decades. The Chicago outfit, heavy and methodical, could not match this speed and aggression. Its hierarchical structure became a liability rather than an advantage. Internal betrayal proved especially devastating. Members realized they now had alternatives: cooperation with law enforcement, witness protection, new identities, and freedom. This dismantled the fear-based system that had kept the organization intact for generations. Any member could now become a liability. Secrets leaked. Trust evaporated. Control vanished. Every minor mistake escalated into crisis. A flawed money transfer, a compromised shipment, or a single informant could unravel years of infrastructure. Conflicts were no longer resolved internally. They spilled into the public eye, drawing police, media, and federal attention. Internal wars became public spectacles, exposing the vulnerability of a force once thought untouchable. Leadership descended into power struggles. Some relied on money and bribes, others on threats and violence. Others formed alliances with younger members to oust rivals. In this chaos, old allies died, long-standing agreements collapsed, and trusted networks disappeared. The Chicago outfit ceased to function as a unified organism. It fragmented into competing factions fighting for survival. The most destructive factor was cultural transformation. Younger members no longer respected discipline, honor, or long-term loyalty. They pursued immediate wealth, personal dominance, and luxury through new methods: drugs, street violence, and cartel partnerships. Senior leaders could not stop this shift. Attempts to impose order triggered resistance. Harsher punishment bred rebellion. The outfit lost its cultural foundation. Territories once controlled for decades slipped away. New gangs disrupted logistics, attacked routes, and established their own supply chains. Hidden distilleries, tunnels, and warehouses ceased to function. The carefully balanced system collapsed under disorder and infighting. Internal wars, betrayal, and external competition merged into a single force of destruction. Each day brought new challenges, from legal pressure to violent encroachment. The Chicago outfit, once ruling through fear and respect, now faced fragmentation, loss of authority, and irreversible decline. Power became decentralized, symbolic, legendary, but no longer real. This marked the beginning of the outfit's withdrawal from the streets. It did not vanish overnight. It lost revenue, territory, discipline, and loyalty gradually. Internal decay, drugs, generational conflict, and state pressure caused the organization to dissolve, leaving behind only echoes of a time when discipline and strategic intelligence ruled a city. The era of Prohibition marked the absolute peak of the Chicago outfit's power. With the nationwide ban on alcohol, a historic vacuum emerged, one that the state could not fill. The outfit stepped into that void with precision, organization, and ruthless efficiency. It built a citywide system of production, transportation, and distribution that reached every bar, restaurant, and speakeasy in Chicago. Hidden distilleries operated on the outskirts of the city. Secret warehouses were concealed inside abandoned factories and basements. Underground tunnels, sewer passages, and carefully mapped routes allowed alcohol to move invisibly through the city. Every operation required discipline. Drivers followed strict rules. Routes were rotated. Delivery times were fixed down to the minute. Silence was mandatory. Money flowed constantly. Hundreds of thousands of dollars packed into sacks, transported under armed protection, stored in hidden vaults. The outfit was no longer improvising. It was governing an underground economy. Leaders such as Johnny Torrio and later Al Capone understood that raw violence alone was insufficient. Power required structure, predictability, and control. They negotiated with politicians, bribed police commanders, intimidated judges, and established relationships with businessmen who preferred stability over chaos. Violence was used selectively, strategically, as a tool rather than an impulse. Every killing sent a message. Every truce preserved profit. The Chicago outfit extended its reach far beyond bootlegging. Gambling houses, bookmaking operations, prostitution rings, and protection rackets were absorbed into a unified system. Each business fed the central structure. Each territory had supervisors, collectors, and enforcers. No operation functioned independently. The outfit became an invisible administration layered beneath the official city government. Political influence was one of its most powerful weapons. Elections were manipulated. Officials were bought or coerced. Labor unions were infiltrated and controlled. Construction contracts, transportation routes, and supply chains passed through outfit approval. The city functioned with two governments, one legal, one criminal, and in many neighborhoods, the criminal one was faster, more decisive, and more feared. Internally, the organization operated with near-military precision. Ranks were clearly defined, orders flowed downward without question. Financial reporting was mandatory. Disputes were resolved internally through councils of senior members. Punishments were calculated, not only to eliminate threats, but to reinforce discipline. Exile, financial ruin, or death were tools used to preserve order. Yet within this golden age, the seeds of collapse were already growing. The immense wealth generated by Prohibition attracted attention, both from law enforcement and from within. Greed intensified rivalries. Younger members, intoxicated by money and power, pushed boundaries. They flaunted wealth, ignored protocol, and drew unnecessary attention. The very success of the outfit made discretion harder to maintain. The federal government adapted. Agencies coordinated. Financial investigations replaced street raids. Tax law became a weapon. Al Capone himself was not brought down by murder charges, but by accounting. This marked a turning point. Brute force could no longer shield leadership from a system that attacked money rather than guns. At the same time, the end of Prohibition removed the outfit's most stable revenue stream. Alcohol, once illegal and enormously profitable, became legal again. Margins collapsed. Control weakened. The underground economy shrank. The outfit was forced to pivot to gambling, loan sharking, narcotics, but none offered the same balance of profit, stability, and public demand. The loss of alcohol revenue exposed structural weaknesses. Without a unifying economic engine, internal cohesion faltered. Territories became contested. Income inequality within the organization increased. Loyalty weakened as opportunities narrowed. Violence increased, not as strategy, but as desperation. Public perception also shifted. Once seen by some neighborhoods as providers of order and access, the outfit increasingly appeared as a relic of chaos. The state grew stronger. Institutions expanded. Policing improved. Surveillance advanced. The space in which the mafia had thrived narrowed. What had once been a system designed to govern disorder now struggled to survive order. The Chicago outfit remained powerful, but it was no longer inevitable. Its dominance depended increasingly on legacy, fear, and memory, rather than operational superiority. The organization that once controlled Chicago like a shadow state began losing its grip, not through a single blow, but through erosion. The Prohibition era had built an empire. Its end revealed the cost of that empire. Dependence on a world that no longer existed. What ultimately broke the Chicago outfit was not a single raid, a single arrest, or even a single generation of leaders. It was the moment when the law stopped reacting and began anticipating. The federal government learned how the mafia actually functioned, not as a collection of criminals, but as a system. For decades, the outfit had survived because its structure was invisible to traditional policing. Street-level arrests meant nothing. Soldiers were replaceable. Even mid-level captains could be sacrificed without damaging the core. Leadership insulated itself through layers of loyalty, silence, and distance from direct violence. This model worked perfectly until the law changed its strategy. The introduction and aggressive use of the RICO Act marked a historic shift. For the first time, prosecutors did not need to prove that a leader personally committed a crime. It was enough to prove participation in a criminal enterprise. The structure itself became illegal. Membership became liability. Hierarchy became evidence. This struck at the very foundation of the Chicago outfit. The same discipline and organization that once protected it now exposed it. Financial trails, communication chains, internal hierarchies, everything that made the outfit efficient now made it traceable. The law no longer needed witnesses to individual murders. It needed patterns, and patterns were everywhere. At the same time, witness protection programs shattered the mafia's most sacred principle: silence. For generations, the fear of retribution ensured loyalty. Betrayal meant death, not just for the traitor, but often for their family. This fear created stability. It created obedience. It created control. Witness protection destroyed that equilibrium. For the first time, a man could talk and survive. He could disappear. He could receive a new identity, a new home, a new future. The threat of revenge weakened. Fear lost its absolute authority. Loyalty became negotiable, and once the first man spoke, others followed. Each informant revealed more than names. They exposed rituals, structures, financial flows, disciplinary systems, and long-hidden relationships. They explained how decisions were made, how disputes were resolved, how money moved upward. The mythology of the outfit collapsed under the weight of detail. Internally, paranoia spread. Trust eroded. Meetings became smaller. Communication slowed. Leaders suspected betrayal everywhere. Decisions were delayed or avoided altogether. The organization, once decisive and confident, became cautious and fragmented. Generational conflict intensified the collapse. Older leaders clung to traditional rules: avoid narcotics, minimize visibility, preserve hierarchy. Younger members rejected restraint. They wanted faster profits, riskier ventures, and personal independence. They saw the outfit not as a family, but as a tool. Narcotics accelerated the breakdown. Drugs generated enormous money, but they destroyed discipline. Addiction spread instability. Violence became erratic. Street-level conflicts escalated without authorization. Police attention increased. The old model of controlled criminality was replaced by chaos. The outfit could not adapt fast enough. While international cartels expanded with speed, brutality, and global logistics, the Chicago outfit remained bound to its old structure. It was hierarchical, slow-moving, cautious. It valued control over expansion. In a new criminal economy defined by scale and aggression, those values became weaknesses. Economically, the city no longer needed the outfit. Businesses found legal alternatives. Unions fell under federal oversight. Political corruption became riskier. Financial transparency increased. The mafia's role as intermediary, enforcer, and stabilizer lost relevance. One by one, leaders fell. Not through gunfire, but through courtrooms. Long sentences removed institutional memory. Veterans aged in prison. New leadership lacked experience and legitimacy. Authority fragmented. The outfit did not collapse dramatically. It thinned, it retreated, it faded. Territories were abandoned. Operations downsized. Violence decreased, not from restraint, but from incapacity. The organization survived in fragments, operating quietly, cautiously, locally. No more citywide control, no more dominance. What remained was a shadow of a shadow. By the late 20th century, the Chicago outfit no longer shaped the city. It reacted to it. It avoided attention. It survived rather than ruled. Its greatest power became its legend. And that legend was stronger than the reality. The Chicago outfit did not lose a war. It lost relevance. It lost the environment that made it necessary. It lost the cultural soil in which it had grown. It was not destroyed. It was outpaced. By the late 20th century, the Chicago outfit had become more legend than reality. Its influence over the streets, the economy, and politics had waned to mere shadows, surviving only in whispers and cautious operations. The once living organism of control, discipline, and intimidation now functioned in isolated cells, each wary of exposure, each wary of the law, each wary of its own members. The mechanisms that had made the outfit powerful, secret warehouses, loyal soldiers, intricate financial channels, and vast networks of influence, were no longer sufficient to dominate a changing world. The legend of the outfit, however, grew even as its power shrank. Movies, books, and media romanticized the violence, cunning, and wealth of its leaders. Names like Al Capone and Johnny Torrio became synonymous with a golden era of strategy, ruthlessness, and control. Yet reality was always more complex. Behind the spectacle of bootlegging, gambling, and shootouts was an intricate, almost corporate-level organization that required skill, loyalty, and discipline. The myth focused on the violence. The reality was strategy and meticulous organization. Chicago outfit's disappearance was gradual, invisible to the public. Streets that had once been under strict control were now contested by new gangs and emerging criminal enterprises. Younger generations, unbound by the old code, acted quickly, violently, and unpredictably. The outfit, slow and methodical, could not match the speed and audacity of these newcomers. Territories shrank, revenues declined. Operations moved underground, cautious and compartmentalized, no longer a cohesive force. Internally, the collapse was psychological as much as operational. Fear no longer commanded loyalty. Respect could no longer maintain hierarchy. The code of silence, the cornerstone of stability, was broken by federal witness protection programs and the promise of legal immunity. Members who might have once accepted punishment in silence now cooperated with authorities, often in exchange for safety, money, and new identities. The very foundation of trust, essential for any criminal enterprise, was eroding. Cultural shifts amplified the collapse. Immigrant communities had integrated more fully into American society. The original conditions that had made the outfit necessary, poverty, exclusion, lack of law enforcement oversight, were diminishing. Children of immigrants sought education and legitimate careers. Crime as a means of upward mobility lost appeal. The social contract that once bound members to the organization weakened, leaving the outfit dependent on aging leaders who struggled to maintain cohesion. Internationalization of crime also played a critical role. Latin American cartels, Asian syndicates, and global smuggling networks operated at a scale and speed unimaginable in the outfit's heyday. Their operations were borderless, diversified, and highly adaptable. The Chicago outfit, with its roots in local control and slow, hierarchical decision-making, could not compete. It was a regional power trying to survive in a globalized underworld. Federal laws, particularly RICO, continued to dismantle remaining structures. Unlike the past, when arrests merely removed temporary obstacles, now the law could dismantle the organization itself. Leaders could be imprisoned for association, finances could be seized, and operations permanently disrupted. The fear that had once ensured silence and obedience had become ineffective. The outfit, like a tree stripped of its roots, remained standing only in form. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the Chicago outfit was a whisper. Some cells continued low-level rackets, some invested in legitimate businesses, but no central authority existed. The legend was far more powerful than reality. The structure that had once orchestrated citywide operations, controlled elections, regulated labor, and managed immense wealth was now fragmented and largely symbolic. Today, remnants of the outfit exist in quiet corners. Small-scale gambling operations, private security, or minor extortion schemes may still bear its mark. But it does not command the city. It does not enforce law or territory. It does not dictate power. Its essence, once a combination of fear, loyalty, discipline, and strategy, has been reduced to memory, myth, and cautionary tale. The disappearance of the Chicago outfit illustrates a broader truth. Even the most organized and disciplined systems cannot endure when culture, technology, law, and society evolve faster than the organization itself. Fear, loyalty, and structure, once unstoppable forces, cannot survive in isolation from relevance. The outfit was not destroyed in a moment. It faded layer by layer, as each structural and cultural element eroded. The story of Chicago outfit is a study in the life cycle of power. It shows how a system can grow from necessity, dominate with precision, and ultimately dissolve when the world changes beyond its adaptability. The organization that once ruled streets, industries, and governments is now a historical artifact, a reminder of the intersection between ambition, discipline, and inevitability. Its legacy survives not in control, but in the archetype it created. Movies, literature, and popular culture immortalize the idea of the structured, disciplined criminal family. Yet beneath every legend lies the reality of human limitations, generational conflict, and the relentless march of societal evolution. Chicago outfit's disappearance was not dramatic. It was inevitable. In the end, the Chicago outfit lost not because it was defeated by law enforcement or rival gangs, but because the society around it evolved. The codes, hierarchies, and systems that had once granted it supremacy were no longer compatible with a changing world. It ceased to be necessary, ceased to be relevant, and ultimately ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. What remains today is history, a powerful lesson on the fragility of even the most imposing empires when faced with the inexorable forces of time and change. By the early 21st century, the Chicago outfit had transitioned from a living, breathing organization into a historical shadow of itself. Its streets were no longer patrolled by enforcers who demanded silence through fear. Its warehouses, once labyrinthine fortresses of contraband and cash, had either been abandoned, taken over by other criminal elements, or absorbed into legitimate businesses. The massive financial machinery that had redistributed money from bootlegging, gambling, and extortion had largely vanished, replaced by conventional banking and the transparency demanded by federal authorities. Yet the stories, the strategies, the code, and the myths remained, echoing through the annals of crime history. The decline was neither sudden nor violent. It was structural, cultural, and generational. The leadership, once unified under visionaries like Johnny Torrio and Al Capone, was fractured by succession disputes, ambition, and the very mechanisms designed to protect loyalty. The hierarchy that had maintained absolute order through discipline, fear, and incentive could not withstand the shifting priorities of younger members. many of whom had been raised in a world with different values. For them, rapid wealth, narcotics, and influence in new sectors outweighed the old codes of loyalty, discretion, and strategy. This created internal conflicts that were often invisible to outsiders, but deadly to organizational cohesion. The outfit's operational blueprint, perfected over decades, was now anachronistic. Secret warehouses hidden behind ordinary storefronts, intricate distribution networks for illegal alcohol, and the complex accounting methods that tracked every dollar and every gun could no longer function efficiently. Law enforcement technology, surveillance, wiretaps, financial audits made secrecy almost impossible. Informants, once too afraid to speak, now had protections under witness protection programs, offering immunity and relocation in exchange for testimony. The fear that had once been the organization's backbone evaporated. Yet the Chicago outfit had always been more than fear. It was structure, culture, and systemic intelligence. Every member understood their role from initiation through mid-level operations to strategic leadership. New recruits proved loyalty through small tasks before being entrusted with more significant operations. There were layers upon layers of responsibility and surveillance, from logistical control of shipments to the management of legal businesses used as fronts for revenue and influence. Enforcement was precise. A violation of code was met with proportionate retaliation, whether through economic sanctions, physical punishment, or social exile within the organization. Despite its internal discipline, the outfit was never immune to generational disruption. Young members, inspired by pop culture, the lure of instant wealth, or connections with international drug cartels, challenged traditional methods. Where old members relied on patience, negotiation, and strategic influence, the new generation prioritized immediate profit and personal gain. This resulted in conflicts over territory, operations, and alliances, often turning internal disputes into opportunities for federal infiltration. The organization's strength lay in unity. The loss of internal cohesion became its death knell. Financial evolution also played a crucial role. The outfit had long relied on a blend of illicit and legitimate enterprises. During Prohibition, bootlegging generated immense cash flow, allowing the purchase of real estate, gambling halls, and transportation businesses, all woven into a tightly controlled web. But the legalization of alcohol, tighter financial regulations, and the globalization of commerce undermined this model. Chicago outfit's traditional sources of revenue were no longer unique or unassailable. Investments in legitimate businesses became vulnerable to competition, taxation, and legal scrutiny. The old methods of integrating crime into daily city life through subtle control of logistics, labor, and municipal influence were no longer as effective. Moreover, federal law and legislation had advanced in ways that directly targeted organized crime. RICO statutes, enacted to prosecute not just individual criminals, but entire organizations, made the outfit vulnerable even when no overt violent crime had occurred. Members could be indicted solely for their association with the organization, breaking the internal loyalty that had been nearly absolute for decades. Witness protection offered former members not just safety, but a way to evade retribution, eliminating one of the outfit's most effective tools: fear of vengeance. The cultural environment around the outfit also shifted dramatically. Chicago's neighborhoods evolved. Immigrant populations, which had initially created the fertile ground for the outfit's growth, were no longer isolated or dependent. Their children were educated, mobile, and integrated into broader society. Crime as a method of survival diminished in necessity and prestige. The social contract that bound members to the organization weakened. While fear and loyalty had once sufficed, they could not replace relevance or opportunity in a modernizing urban landscape. In terms of operations, the Chicago outfit had been exceptionally advanced. The network of warehouses, safe houses, clandestine distilleries, and hidden transportation channels represented a logistical achievement rivaling legal enterprises. Couriers transported liquor using specialized vehicles, often with false compartments or decoy loads. Each shipment was meticulously documented within the internal system to track risk and reward, prevent theft, and enforce accountability. Senior members oversaw the logistics, mid-level operatives executed operations, and low-level recruits were tested for loyalty and competence. Yet as federal oversight intensified and competitors grew bolder, these systems became liabilities rather than assets. The outfit's intelligence apparatus, long a pillar of its power, was also eroded. Informants in the police department, city hall, newspapers, and competing businesses provided real-time data that allowed the leadership to anticipate threats and opportunities. But by the late 20th century, institutional anti-corruption reforms and surveillance technology made infiltration both riskier and more visible. Intelligence that had once been near perfect became partial, delayed, and unreliable. Leaders could no longer predict moves of competitors, law enforcement, or even their own members with the same precision. International operations further stressed the outfit. Connections with New York families, Detroit syndicates, and Sicilian networks had once been a source of strength. But globalization introduced competition from Latin American drug cartels and transnational criminal enterprises operating far beyond local or national law enforcement reach. The outfit, historically strong due to hierarchical discipline and local dominance, could not operate effectively in this rapidly shifting international landscape. Internally, betrayal was devastating. Members who might have once died for the family now cooperated with authorities or pursued independent profit. Small infractions, previously punishable but contained, cascaded into larger crises. One mishandled shipment, one miscommunication, one personal feud could unravel months of planning. The organization that had survived for decades on precision and loyalty was now vulnerable to human error amplified by disloyalty. Even the legendary leaders, survivors of Prohibition-era wars, and the architects of organized strategy were aging. Leadership succession became sporadic and contested. Where unity had once been enforced through strategy, negotiation, and sometimes violence, it was now often replaced with uncertainty, misalignment, and cautious compromise. Without cohesive guidance, operational efficiency fell. Profitable ventures faltered, alliances disintegrated, and internal disputes escalated. By the 1990s, Chicago outfit was effectively invisible in terms of public power. It existed in fragments, minor gambling operations, small-time extortion, and quiet business investments. Its influence over city politics, labor, and commerce was largely symbolic. Yet the organization's cultural footprint remained enormous. It was a legend, a warning, and a model, immortalized in films, books, and journalism as a system that had once mastered the delicate balance between fear, respect, and enterprise. The final disappearance of the outfit was not an abrupt collapse, but a slow dissolution, a fading of relevance. Its structures, once necessary and dominant, became obsolete. The social, economic, and political conditions that had allowed it to flourish were gone. Internationalization of crime, modernization of law enforcement, cultural assimilation, and generational shifts all combined to erode the foundation. What had survived through violence, strategy, and organization was now irrelevant in a world that no longer required its mediation or control. In conclusion, The Chicago outfit serves as a profound lesson in the life cycle of organizations and systems of power. It was a living entity that emerged from necessity, thrived through discipline, cunning, and fear, and eventually faded when the conditions that created it ceased to exist. Its final dissolution was not a dramatic overthrow, but an inevitable process, a gradual unraveling of structure, culture, and purpose. Today, the outfit exists primarily in memory and myth, a symbol of strategic genius, ruthless enforcement, and the transient nature of even the most formidable power. Chicago outfit lost not to a single enemy, law enforcement raid, or rival gang, but to history itself. Social evolution, generational change, legal innovation, and globalization ensured that the empire built on fear, discipline, and loyalty could not survive. Its legacy endures in stories, movies, and legends, but as a living force, it is gone. It dissolved into history, leaving behind lessons about loyalty, power, adaptation, and the inevitability of change. The rise, dominance, and gradual dissolution of the Chicago outfit. Introduction. The Chicago outfit did not appear out of nowhere. It emerged as a response to a chaotic world, an attempt to impose structure where law enforcement was weak and the streets of Chicago were dangerous and unpredictable. Immigrants from southern Italy, primarily Sicily, brought with them traditions, habits, and a criminal culture rooted in strict discipline, a code of silence, and a concept of honor. They arrived in the United States poor, with minimal English and few connections, but with immense ambition and survival skills. In this world, power was measured not by law, but by force, and force became the foundation of the Chicago outfit. The early years. The first years were chaotic. Ethnic neighborhoods competed for control of business, from petty trade to large-scale operations. Survival required negotiation, alliances, and violent retribution against those who overstepped. Initially, these were small gangs, but gradually they merged under leaders capable of uniting the local gangs, establishing supply chains, protection, and revenue distribution. Yeah, they were not just committing crimes, they were building a system. Every member knew their role and the consequences of disobedience. Discipline was enforced not only through death, but also exile, meaning the loss of family, income, respect, and protection. The Prohibition-era Prohibition marked the outfit's golden era. The ban on alcohol created a unique opportunity, supplying every bar and restaurant in the city. This required high organization, secret distilleries, hidden warehouses, intricate delivery routes, and drivers who adhered to strict discipline and silence. Money flowed freely, and the organization's power expanded. The outfit controlled infrastructure around alcohol, including transport, warehouses, and even politicians who could be bribed or intimidated. Chicago outfit became a massive mechanism where every part had its place and functioned in harmony. Discipline and loyalty. Discipline and loyalty were central. The outfit survived not merely by guns or fear, but through a culture that turned crime into a profession. New recruits underwent rigorous training, learned internal rules, understood rewards and punishments, and respected seniors. The organization operated more efficiently than any contemporary corporation. Each level had tasks, budgets, and overseers, ensuring adherence to rules and consequences for violations. Social functions. Despite being a criminal organization, the outfit had quasi-social functions. It provided protection for members' families, support for the elderly, and pensions for veterans of the organization. This internal order allowed it to withstand external pressures and maintain influence. Investments in legitimate businesses expanded influence, controlling restaurants, hotels, clubs, construction, and even early film studios. Each enterprise had a dual purpose: legal income and hidden control over the city, keeping people dependent. Intelligence and diplomacy. The outfit's intelligence network was extensive, with informants in the police, city hall, courts, and newspapers. Leaders knew about events in Chicago before anyone else, enabling precise planning, avoiding state interference, and manipulating banks, families, and business people. Diplomatic channels connected Chicago to New York, Detroit, Cleveland, and even international groups, preventing internal wars, neutralizing threats, and expanding influence, generational conflict, and internal strife. As the organization grew, internal tensions increased. Younger members sought quick money, drugs, and luxury, ignoring the code of silence and old disciplinary methods. Conflicts arose, and loyalty weakened. The outfit became increasingly complex but fragile. Federal agencies intensified efforts to combat organized crime, implementing witness protection and using laws to dismantle operations. The outfit's original purpose, controlling the streets, was gradually replaced by government authority and legal business, reducing the mafia's relevance. The final years and dissolution. By the late 20th century, the Chicago outfit was no longer a dominant citywide force. New gangs and international cartels operated aggressively, exploiting the outfit's declining influence. Federal laws, RICO, witness protection, and law enforcement technology undermined secrecy and fear. Internal betrayal, generational change, and drugs fractured the organization from within. Leadership succession became contested. Operational precision faltered, and alliances disintegrated. Its remaining operations were small-scale, minor gambling, limited extortion, and investments in legal businesses. Control over politics, labor, and commerce was symbolic. The Chicago outfit existed as a cultural icon rather than an active power. Films, literature, and journalism immortalized its structure, strategy, and ruthlessness, but the organization had already lost relevance. Conclusion. The Chicago outfit did not vanish through a single raid or battle. It dissolved slowly through cultural, generational, legal, and economic changes. Internal discipline eroded, loyalty faltered, new criminal models emerged, and federal oversight expanded. The organization lost relevance as society and economics evolved. Today, the outfit exists as legend, memory, and historical study, a testament to a system that once controlled a city through fear, strategy, and organization. Its disappearance teaches lessons about power, adaptability, loyalty, and the inevitability of change.